Well, hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle, and welcome to this special three-part trifecta examining the horrific failure of what was once a great American metropolis and economic juggernaut, namely Detroit. Now, in part one, we looked at the economic causes that led to the catastrophe. In this episode, we'll look at the political forces at work. So let's bring in Steve Green and Scott Ott to assay the damage. Gentlemen, or assess the damage, one of those two things. Let's look at Detroit right in her prime, 1960 or so. Let's have a look. Look at that. That is a growing metropolis. Wow. Look at the confident kind of modern architecture, city services that work and work well, kind of frugal financial affairs, well managed financially. And 1962 is also notable because in 1962, a Democrat was elected mayor of Detroit, and for every one of the 51 years since then, there's been a Democrat at the helm. Now, maybe this is a coincidence, but I don't think so. As we saw in part one, Detroit's population is in free fall, and many of the same big government, highly regulated, highly unionized, highly taxed conditions are being applied here in Los Angeles as well, for that matter. Formerly well-run like California, and now, like Detroit, bleeding out people and businesses, skills, and jobs. Look at that. It's just a wasteland. Steve, this seems obvious to me. You put Democrats and this big blue state model in place for half a century, and you go from booming metropolis to a bombed-out wasteland. Do you agree?
Well, yeah. And you know what? This is a case where I think numbers really tell the story. I live in Monument, Colorado. It's a little veteran community in El Paso County. And El Paso we've got Colorado Springs as our big town, but I mean, there used to be some mines here. We've got some tourism. There's just not a whole lot here except for some really pretty views. El Paso County now has almost exactly the same number of people as Detroit. Detroit used to have 1.8 million people. Now we both have about 700,000. But, you know, back when Detroit ruled the world, you mentioned 1960, this also tells the story. Michigan had 20 electoral college votes. Florida had 10. Today, that's 16 for Michigan, and it's 29 for Florida, which has maybe a corrupt government, but at least it's a sane government. And just a warning for you there, Bill, in California. California has gained electoral college votes in every census since it was admitted to the Union, just going up and up and up until this last 2010 census where it didn't gain any. And you're a pilot, you know this. Right before you plummet to Earth, you stall. That's where California is right now. It's going down the same path as Detroit.
I'm staying here because I want to be the last guy in California. I think me and three other Texans with AR-15s, we could conquer this state. Anyway, Scott, you're a politician in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, and part of your jurisdiction, I understand, I almost said part of your diocese, is Allentown, Pennsylvania, which in some ways is a bit like Detroit Light, I think. What are some of the political problems with the blue model that you're facing out there in Allentown, and how can a red model guy like you make any changes in this kind of giveaway forever?
Well, it's really fascinating because you don't have to have too many votes to get elected to be mayor of a city like Allentown. The current mayor, who is the incumbent up for re-election right now, got elected by 7,800 votes in a city of 110,000. So you have very low voter participation in local elections. You've got 7,800 total votes, and he became mayor of Allentown. And so then you have, so low turnout local elections. You've got 7 city council people who are all Democrats and a mayor who's a Democrat, and this long, slow slide, a terrible pension deal that was made years ago, not the fault of this mayor, that they just tried to bail out partially by selling off the city's water system, essentially selling a 50-year lease of the city's water system. So they're in desperate financial straits because of deals made long ago. And it's funny because a lot of states have this law that, well, I'm sorry, you can't break the pension deal you made by those short-term politicians, some of whom are now dead, from years ago, made this deal in bad faith with, idiocy, and you're stuck with it under state law. And I think in many ways, Detroit's in the same position.
I was in Phoenix not too long ago speaking out about the Obamacare expansion and discovered that Arizona had sold its state capitol. They don't own their own state capitol building. They've sold it to somebody, and even representatives of the Arizona state government can't find out who they sold it to. You can't cannibalize yourself forever, folks. You know, the amazing and depressing thing about Detroit is how thoroughly, consistently, and totally identity politics trumps not only self-interest, but actual survival. You know, another town had problems with crime, corruption, out-of-control spending, and cronyism. That town took a chance, changed course and elected, as a measure of desperation, I suppose, a Republican mayor. And that mayor, Rudy Giuliani, turned Times Square from a sewer into Disneyland. He did it fairly quickly, too. He had a headwind of naysayers all the way. He was vilified as the murderer of homeless people and all the rest. But New York City was reborn. I saw it with my own eyes. Kind of makes you wonder, just how bad will Detroit have to get before the residents wake up to the same message New Yorkers woke up to? And will Detroit, Michigan, at that time, be smaller than Allentown, Pennsylvania, when or if that finally happens? Nobody knows. In part 3, we're going to talk about what we can do to save, if not Detroit, then the rest of America's cities dying under the blue model. It's for PJTV members only, so if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, you may want to give that a thought sometime. For PJTV and Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next time.